I've got a question from one of our listeners, and that is Mike calling in from Phoenix. Mike, how are you?
I am well, sir. So good to talk to you.
You had a question about investing, especially as it applies to long-distance investing, right?
Exactly. I live in Phoenix and have done a little bit of investing locally, and I love your show. I love your stuff, but I just have some concerns about investing in a town or a state that I don't live in. It's a little scary.
Yeah, well, very good concern, and I got to tell you, when I was 16 years old, as I've talked about on the show before, I read a book by Robert Allen, and it was called Nothing Down. And one of the things that Robert Allen said is he said, try to always invest in properties that are within 1 hour of your home. Well, 20 some odd years ago, that was probably reasonably decent advice, but that was before Al Gore invented the internet. Joking, of course. And it was before a lot of the sophisticated tools we have nowadays. Here is the problem with thinking locally. And the problem is really twofold, Mike. One problem is that you may not live in the right place. You may not live in the best place to invest. So, for example, if you lived in any place virtually in California, or if you lived any place in, say, the New York City, the greater New York City area, or any area in maybe like the city of Chicago, or in any of the more expensive areas in Florida, or more expensive areas in Connecticut or Boston, or anywhere in the country where the real estate, where the land values are very high. In those markets, you only live in places where it makes sense to speculate or gamble. And those aren't the types of markets that we like. Those are very unreliable markets. They're very inconsistent. They've got the roller coaster effect where prices go up and they go down, and it's really nice or really ugly, and you're definitely not investing for cash flow. Now, don't get me wrong. You can make money in those markets, and I have made a lot of money speculating on real estate in California, but it's not a prudent thing. It's a thing where you're more lucky than good. And our approach is pretty conservative. We invest for income. We invest for cash flow. So the first issue is you may not live in the right place. Now, that said, you happen to live in Phoenix. Phoenix is okay. It's not great. The problem is that Phoenix is up about 34% from the bottom already. So the market in Phoenix has recovered pretty nicely in terms of prices, and the rents never keep pace with the prices. That's why expensive markets pretty much always don't work as a good, prudent way to invest in real estate, because the rents, the cash flow never ever keeps up with prices. So that's one issue. But even if you live in a great place to invest, and Phoenix is certainly not a bad place to invest. That's one of our markets. We do a little bit of business in Phoenix, but not a lot because the prices have come up so much. But say you lived in Atlanta, one of my favorite markets, or Dallas or Houston or St. Louis, or, any of the markets that are really, really good for investing right now. Indianapolis, there's a whole list. But if you lived in any of those markets, the second problem you would encounter by thinking only locally is that you would never be diversified. You would always be investing and having your eggs all in one basket. Now, there's an old saying in real estate that I talk a lot about on the show. All real estate is local. And that is definitely true. And local markets can experience problems regardless of the market. Even a really good market like Houston experiences problems. I mean, I think it was the late 80s, this is kind of before my time here, but I heard a lot of stories about it. And there were actually billboards in Houston along the freeways in the I believe it was the late 80s, don't quote me on the exact time frame, but around there. And they would say things like, will the last person to leave Houston please turn out the lights? So Houston is like the energy capital of the United States, besides, North Dakota with the oil fields. But Houston is a great place in terms of that. But even good markets can experience problems. So take the most historically performing asset class, income property, and diversify geographically into good, prudent, high income, high cash flow markets. That is my answer to that. So it's a twofold problem. Number one, you may not live in the right place. And number two, even if you do, you're not going to be diversified. So I say that the issues of geography, which are far less meaningful than they've ever been in human history with the internet, with the tools we have nowadays, with our system that my company offers, the complete solution for real estate investors. With those tools, you overcome the handicaps of geography pretty darn well, and you would be far better off investing in a property that can give you positive cash flow and diversification in terms of markets over being close to your home in Newport Beach, California, for example. So, and even if you live in the right market, you gotta be diversified. Does that kind of address the issue and answer your question?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I feel a lot more comfortable. Thanks, man.